All right, 7:02 p.m. 10/14/2024. I'm going to ramble a little bit and then I'm going to jump into the Americanization of Emily. I've read Altered States and The Hospital by Paddy Chayefsky, two very different um, screenplays, both of which had kind of fantastical elements, practical elements. Altered States uh, was a little bit above my pay grade. I kind of had, you kind of have to, with sci fi, any kind of version, subgenre of sci fi, you kind of have to suspend disbelief a little bit and go along for the ride. And I'm open to it, but sometimes it goes a little bit over my head and above my head. And I tried to find the film online and uh, can't quite find it, but maybe I'll give it a try someday with William Hurt in the lead and the great Bob Balaban supporting. Bob Balaban talks. He did an AMA on Reddit a little while ago, and I asked him a few questions, but I didn't know about him in Altered States, and somebody else asked him a question, and he talked about it a little bit. And there's a interesting history backstory on the film between Paddy Chayefsky and Ken Russell. A little bit of drama, so that's interesting. Um, that's one that I would definitely have to revisit a little. Again, it went a little bit over my head. I could grasp it, but there were elements of that play that reminded me of Seconds with John Frankenheimer's Seconds with Rock Hudson. It reminded me of Werewolf in London, to the point where I was wondering if John Landis completely ripped off uh, the section where he essentially is transformed in the isolation tank and wakes up naked in a zoo. I mean, it's kind of beat for beat what happens to the character in An American Werewolf in London. Great, great visual and great. I can understand why somebody would want to use it again, but it does feel a little bit of a ripoff. But and in the film, I could only find people reacting to Altered States, so I saw a little bit of it. But and it reminded me of The Fly. I have a very hard time believing people like Landis and Cronenberg didn't see Altered States and weren't affected by it in some way. The Fly um, is essentially an aside, sci-fi body horror, which that's kind of Cronenberg's uh, home is body horror, and it's great. And it also reminded me of Videodrome a little bit, essentially where a human being pushes his or her limits, pushes reality's limits, and gets themselves entangled in something that they can't quite untangle themselves from. That's always it's a familiar territory, but it's good territory to explore. And but also to give credit where credit's due, it also reminded me of The Wolfman. So this has been going on for a while, and but uh, it's interesting. There's a lot of kind of jargon that I wasn't used to that was central to the story and belonged within in that world in which the story created. So I just had to kind of go along. Same thing with The Hospital. There was a lot of medical jargon that just kind of have to roll with it and go with it. Um, that's another one that I would have loved. I couldn't find a copy online to watch. So, and it's got the wonderful George C. Scott, who honestly, even though I haven't seen the bulk of his filmography, I always enjoy watching him. He's he's a tremendous actor, and hearing him give the impotent speech is quite hilarious. So, and that one too, I kind of Patty seems to have a character with a god delusion, a kind of false prophet that is like the monkey wrench in his stories. That's got like one foot in reality and one foot in the absurd. So you can't quite count him out, but you can't quite use him as a sensible touchstone. So, but I'm curious as to the film The Hospital, how that is. But last night I started to watch The Americanization of Emily with the great James Garner and Julie Andrews, pre Victor Victoria. And I think I got about 25 minutes in till I was starting to fall asleep because it was like 3 in the morning. And I thought, well, you know what? Why don't I start reading that and give that a try? So, I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna read a little. Let's see if there's a preamble. Let's see. And this is one script where it's based on a novel that Paddy didn't write. So he's adapting the novel, The Americanization of Emily, 1964, screenplay by Paddy Chayefsky, based on the novel by William Bradford Huey. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Produced by Martin Ransohoff, directed by Arthur Hiller. So yet again, another Arthur Hiller work. I believe he did. Now I gotta look it up just to make sure. Arthur Hiller. Let's see. Did he do The Hospital? Yeah, he did The Hospital as well. The film adaptation of The Hospital. So, and he directed The In-Laws, Serpentine. Okay. I watched that one last year. I finally watched The In-Laws last year, and Ellen Arkin is such a delight, and Peter Falk with Ellen Arkin, you can tell they loved each other, and that was wonderful to watch. I finally put that one off for a long time and finally was able to see it. But yeah, Arthur Hiller, he's a good director. And good lord, his filmography is pretty long. Have I seen anything else of his? I don't know that Good lord. Yeah, The In-Laws I've seen. Making Love, I haven't seen. The Lonely Guy. I know some of these, I just haven't seen them yet. Interesting. Okay. So he did The Hospital and The Americanization of Emily. So let's see before I ramble too much more. Yeah, James Garner and Julie Andrews before Victor Victoria fame. And you have Melvin Douglas. Let's see. Keenan Wynn. Joan Crawford. I don't think I know anybody else. But let's go ahead and dive in, shall we? The Americanization of Emily. Yeah. Fade into the rolling of drums. Hendon Airport night. Long wide-angle establishing shot of the airport. A high-level military mission is about to arrive. 3 black official cars wait on the grass by a landing strip. Their drivers, 3 young uniformed English women, lounge in a group by one of the cars, smoking, chatting among themselves. A captain of the U.S. Navy, Spaulding, hurries down to the 3 women drivers, calls something to them. They quickly step on their cigarettes, and each hurries to stand at attention by her car. Now a DC-4 taxis slowly out of the darkness. The following legend appears briefly over this. Hendon Airport, England, May 4th, 1944, midnight. Another angle across the three drivers favoring Emily Barham, a handsome English woman of 24. In background, the DC-4 has come to a halt. Rear Admiral William Jessup and his team, Captain Marvin Ellender, Lieutenant Commander Stanley Bus Cummings, Lieutenant Commander Charles Madison, and Chief Petty Officer Paul Adams, disembark from the plane, each carrying an attaché case. Spaulding moves quickly forward to greet them. There is a brisk exchange of salutes and handshakes. The Admirable Ellender and Cummings follow Spaulding to the cars. Another angle across Emily. A jeep and a three-quarter-ton truck roll up to the plane out of the darkness. 4 sailors begin unloading cases and cartons of everyone's luggage from the plane. In particular, there is an enormous crate that requires the strength of all 4 sailors and 2 of the DC-4 crew to carry. Lieutenant Commander Madison, supervising the distribution of the baggage to the separate cars, busily signs bills of lading and other official documents. He shouts out greetings and dispenses last-minute instructions to the staff. Madison. Hi, Harry. Is everything set at the hotel? To Admiral Jessup. I'll only be a few moments, sir. To crew. Put that hand luggage in the automobile. To Adams. Paul, put the footlockers in the jeep. Everything else goes in the 2.5. Unloading shouldn't take long, so you'll only be a few minutes behind us. I'll see you back at the hotel. As Chief Petty Officer Adams approaches Emily's car, lugging valises, sea bags, and other duffel, she hurries to open the trunk of her car for him. Madison exchanges a few words with Admiral Jessup, already seated in the first of the cars, and then comes strolling down to Emily's car. We see now that Madison is an agreeable young Navy officer in his late 30s. There is, however, something raffish about him which is not at all in key with the somber weightiness of this midnight mission. Indeed, as he passes the driver of the second car, he gives her a good-natured pat. Second driver smiles, whispers, "Hiya, Charlie." Emily's eyebrows shoot up at this. Madison across Emily to Adams. All right, let's go. Adams slams the trunk shut. Long shot. 3 cars turn on the airstrip and drive off. The loading of the truck and jeep continues in background. London, night. Our convoy of military vehicles heads toward the hotel, passing areas of blitz damage to streets and buildings. Westchester Hotel, night. The mission pulls up to the hotel. MPs and soldiers hurry out from the hotel to help with the luggage. Across Emily, Madison dismisses the drivers of the other 2 cars. As he passes the driver of the first car, he amiably pats her, too. First driver smiles at Madison. Glad you're back, Charlie. Emily's eyebrows shoot up again. Madison, calling to Adams in car. Let's go around the back and wait for the truck. Adams nods. Hotel service entrance, night. Truck being unloaded. Hotel basement. Crates and cartons are carried by sweating sailors, with Madison directing the traffic to the service lifts. Hotel 6th-floor hallway. Madison comes out of the service lift and strides to the 6th-floor kitchen. The floor service captain, Tom, an Englishman in hotel livery, stands in the open doorway watching. A large refrigerator has just been uncrated and stands in lofty isolation in the middle of the kitchen floor. Madison pokes his head in. Madison, to floor service captain. Hello, Tom. Tom. Nice to have you back in London, sir. Madison. Thank you. Opens refrigerator. There's a crate of eggs, 4 pounds of bacon, 4 tins of coffee, 6 pounds of butter, assorted marmalades, and 10 pounds of fresh oranges. Would you check those for bruises, Tom? Tom. I will, sir. Madison. The admirable breakfast at 7:30 tomorrow with Captain Ellender and Commander Cummings. I've scribbled down the way everyone likes their eggs. Tom. Thank you, sir. Madison gives the captain a piece of paper, turns to Adams, who is now directing more sailors in more crates down the hallway. Madison. I'll sign us in. You get the wash and dry cleaning. Adams nods. Madison hurries down the hallway as more sailors and crates pour out of the service lift. Hotel night. Emily stands by her car after the jeep and truck have been unloaded. Madison comes out of the hotel in the best of spirits. He signs the papers submitted to him by the drivers of the truck and jeep. As Emily watches him out of the corner of her eye, he stands on the sidewalk amiably drinking in the night air. After a moment, he ambles good-naturedly down to Emily, takes the trip ticket she offers him and signs it, using a window of the car for a desk. Madison smiles affably. Well, get some sleep. As she bends to get into the car, Madison pats her bottom, more out of habit than anything else. However, this driver straightens up and slaps his face a splendid, crisp slap. Emily gets back into her car and starts the motor. Truck driver. You can't win 'em all, Commander. Madison shrugs. Emily's car roars off into the night. Suddenly, the ululation of air raid sirens fills the night. The lights of the hotel quickly black out. Madison darts a nervous look at the sky and hurries back into the hotel. To the rolling of drums and the explosion of bombs, a solemn legend rolls across the black screen. In World War II, few men served their countries more ably than a small group of unheralded heroes known as the dog robbers. A dog robber is the personal attendant of a general or admiral, and his job is to keep his general or admiral well clothed, well fed, and well loved during the battle. Every army and navy in the world has its dog robbers, but, needless to say, ours were the best. To these resolute procurers and Luftmenschen, this film is gratefully dedicated. With an enormous sweep of coronation music, the credits explode. The Americanization of Emily. Under the credits, exterior daylight shots of London in the first week of May 1944, showing the streets crowded with grim-faced, resolute military men, obviously carrying the weight of the invasion on their particular backs and in their particular attaché cases. Navy building. Cut to full shot of Madison entering the lobby, which courses with purposeful Navy personnel. We pan him to the stairway. Commander Cummings' office. Madison enters. Cummings, bespectacled now, is busy behind his desk. Chief Petty Officer Adams is unloading a box filled with packages of nylon stockings. Madison promptly begins stuffing his attaché case with these packages. Cummings, without looking up from his administrative chores. Charlie, the Admiral's playing bridge tonight with Generals Hallerton and Watterson. Madison. General Watterson doesn't play bridge. Cummings. Yeah, but he'll want a partner anyway. Find a couple of someones to complete the foursome. Here's the menu. Dinner will be at 6. Steak, avocado salad, ice cream, and the appropriate wines. Madison to Adams. Call the motor pool and get me a driver. Cummings. We're going to stay put here in London for a while, Charlie, at least until the balloon goes up. Madison. What balloon? Cummings. D-Day. The invasion of Europe. So you might as well set up house. Madison. Okay. Adams. On phone. Motor pool, please. Madison. General Watterson likes red-headed partners, right? To Adams, as he starts for the door. Never mind, Paul. I'll go by the motor pool myself. Exiting. Avocado salad, that's a new one. Navy building motor pool. In the anteroom, the dispatcher, a uniformed woman of 40, sits at her desk, busy at her phone. Dispatcher. Motor pool. Miss Sampson here. She looks up as Madison enters, flutters her hand at him. He flutters his hand at her, continues on to the inner office where three uniformed young English women lounge about, on call. One, Sheila, is a blazing blonde. A second is the driver of the evening before who slapped Madison's face. A brief cold look passes between Madison and this driver. Madison, to the blazing blonde. Sheila, could you be a redhead by 5:30 this afternoon? Sheila, I could manage, love. Am I to dress or am I to drive? Madison, you'll have to dress. It's for dinner and a little bit of mauling. Two-star general who usually passes out about 11:30. Sheila, ooh, a two-star general. She follows Madison back into the dispatcher's office. Dispatcher, calling to third driver. Push on to Chafe, Pat. Two Navy captains wait in front. Here's your ticket. Pat, the third driver, takes her trip ticket. Pat, exiting. Ta-ra, Charlie. Nice that you're back. Madison. Ta-ra, to dispatcher. I need a driver to take me to Hendon. How about Sheila? Dispatcher. She's on call. Calls to Emily in rear office. Emily, dear, take Commander Madison to Hendon Airport. Here's your ticket. The phone rings. Motor pool. Miss Simpson here. In the rear office, Emily looks up, puts her magazine down, comes out into the dispatcher's office to pick up her trip ticket. Sheila to Madison. If I'm to be a redhead, love, I shall need a new frock. Don't you agree? Madison. I'll be back at my room by lunch. Sheila. Aw, you're a love, Charlie. By now, the dispatcher has finished writing up Emily's trip ticket. Emily takes it, exits through the door Madison holds open for her. Dispatcher to Sheila. This is yours, love. Rear Admiral to go to Hammersmith. Sheila. Ooh, a Rear Admiral. Calls to exiting Madison. I'll be up for my new dress during lunch, love. Dissolve to Hendon Airport entrance gates day. The car pulls up to the gate. An MP sergeant comes forward to examine Madison's papers being offered through the rear window. Madison and the MP sergeant talk through the window. The back of Emily's head can be seen. Madison. Is Lieutenant Hayworth still Navy Supply Officer here, Sergeant? MP Sergeant, handing papers back. No, sir. There's a Lieutenant Wade there now, sir. Madison extracts a package of nylon hose from his attaché case, gives it to the sergeant. MP Sergeant. Thank you, sir. It might help you to know, sir, this Lieutenant Wade is from Alabama. Madison nods, then to Emily. The Navy Supply enclosure. The gates open. Emily drives the car into the field. Navy Supply Depot. Lieutenant Victor Wade, an Alabama boy of 28, sips his coffee. The depot is a large Quonset hut filled with monstrous refrigerators called reefers. Wade. This admirable you're dog robbing for, Madison. Is he a good Joe? Madison, we suddenly discover, has a southern drawl and reeks with the restrained charm of a Confederate gentleman. Madison. He's from Virginia, boy. 2 stars. Adjutant to the Secretary of the Navy. Highest echelon policy level. The reverse angle across them to open doorway shows Emily waiting by her car outside. All those stories true about those lady volunteer drivers in the Navy motor pool? Madison. Some of them. Wade. You think you could arrange one of those high echelon Navy motor pool drivers for me? Madison. Come round the hotel tomorrow about 3. I've got some bottles for you besides. Wade. What kind of bottles? Madison. Now, what kind of bottles would I offer a Confederate kinsman in an alien land? Wade. Don't tell me. Madison. I.W. Harper? Wade. Man, you can't get bourbon over here. Madison. You've got 3 bottles. Wade. You're quite a dog robber, ain't you, Madison? Madison. Well, let's just make sure we read each other clear, Wade. I'll take care of you. But, Lieutenant, my admiral sets a better table than anybody in the European theater of operations, including the Supreme Commander. I want the prime of everything you've got in here. When I ask for steak, I mean aged, 2 inches thick, corn fed, that you can cut with a sharp look. I'm setting up house now. For today, I want 6 dozen sirloin strips, 1 crate of oranges, 1 crate of grapefruit, 6 rib roasts, 3 Swift's hams, 6 gallons of ice cream, and 1 gallon of chocolate syrup. I expect to be favored, and if any other admiral's dog robber complains, my admiral will cover for way to the Secretary of the Navy. If you do right, I'll see you get the Legion of Merit with clusters for your gallant service. But if you think on my admiral man, well, my admiral has a pet research project, the study of navigable waters in the Arctic Circle. The last supply officer who sent my admiral a chewy steak is now up at the North Pole doing polar research. You read me, Lieutenant? Wait. Oh, I read you, Commander. He claps Madison on the back. Madison hands Wade a page from his notebook. They walk up the length of the Quonset hut to the door. Wade, eyeing Emily. If you just have that sweet young thing drive that Buick around to the dock, we'll load you up. The supply enclosure, Day. Across Emily by her car, as sailors load it with cartons, crates, and ice cream containers. Madison stands by the trunk, checking off the items. Wade stands by the door of the Quonset hut, checking off his list. Emily regards it all with an icy contempt. Countryside, London, suburbs, Day. Inside the car, as they drive back, Madison sits in the rear seat, crowded in by all the crates and cartons. He checks his watch, makes notes. Emily, suddenly. You Americans are really enjoying this war, aren't you? Madison. Ma'am. Emily. Most English families haven't seen that many oranges or eggs in 5 years, but it's all one big Shriners Convention for you Yanks, isn't it? Madison nods briefly, recognizing the type. Madison. Yeah, well, that's swell, Miss Emily Barham. Madison. Yeah. On to the hotel, Miss Barham. It's nearly lunch. He turns his attention back to his notes. Hotel. Madison's room. The entire bedroom has the look of a storeroom. There's hardly space to walk between all the crates and cartons. Chief Petty Officer Adams is still unpacking. The closets are jammed with frocks, the bed piled high with dress packages, and the bureau obscured by boxes of hosiery, lingerie, soap, and soap flakes. The bathroom is crammed with cases of liquor, cartons of candy, racks of perfume bottles, and a half-size refrigerator for chilling wine. Madison is perched on his bed, talking on the phone and sipping coffee. His lunch. Madison, on phone. Avocado. Demi douzaine. Since when did you start asking for ration coupons, Alfie? Oui. 20 minutes. Hangs up, stands, mutters. Well, that's the avocados. I need a bridge-playing blonde. He looks out the window down to the waiting cars. Madison's POV. Through the window to the sidewalk, 6 floors below, where Emily stands beside her car. Reverse shot. Across Madison shows Sheila lifting a black sheath dress from its package of tissue on the bed. Sheila. Oh, it's too bloody gorgeous, Charlie. Madison. I need a girl, Sheila. A bridge-playing girl. Very crusty. Elegant, with British diction calculated to bring out the upstart in any American, who can handle herself at a dinner table and play bridge like an assassin. Whatever happened to Alice Luddens? Sheila holds the sheath against herself. She married off, love, to a lieutenant in the paratroops. Can't be choosy, I suppose, if you're a widow with 2 kids. May I try it on, Charlie? Madison nods as he riffles through another of his countless notebooks. Sheila dashes off into the bathroom, unbuttoning her uniform, as Captain Harry Spaulding enters from the hall. He affects a cane. He pockets a bottle of perfume he finds on the dresser. Spaulding. Well, the balloon's going up any day now. Madison, looking down at Emily again. What balloon? Spaulding with a cavalier twirl of his cane. D-Day, old man. The invasion of Europe. Any day now, 1,000,000 men are going to hit the beaches of France in the greatest battle in history. Madison. Oh. Harry, do you know any girls who play a good game of bridge? Sheila comes out of the bathroom dressed in her black sheath. Sheila. What do you think, Charlie? He suddenly reaches over and appropriates Spaulding's cane. Madison, again looking down at Emily. Yeah, it's worth a try. Harry, may I borrow this for a little while? He takes the cane. Spaulding. Hey! Madison, it's a matter of state. He opens the door to the hallway and exits, suddenly walking with a noticeable limp, leaning heavily on the cane. A little startled, Spaulding watches him go. Hotel Park Lane side day. Wide-angle shot shows Emily leaning against the front fender of her car, smoking, as Madison comes out of the hotel. She is a little astonished to see him walking with his right leg stiff as a board and using a cane. So, for that matter, is a lieutenant in the background who is going into the hotel. Full shot of the lieutenant going in and Madison coming out. Lieutenant. Hey, Charlie, what happened to you? Lieutenant. Madison mutters. Knock off. Madison comes down to the car. Emily steps quickly on her cigarette and hurries to open the rear door. Madison makes a great show of pain. An old wound, Commander? Madison grimaces. Yes, I caught a bit of flack flying for the RAF in 1940. It acts up every now and then. Emily, not unamused. Pity. Madison rubs his suddenly wounded thigh, regards Emily. Madison. Miss Barham, do you play bridge? Emily. Yes, I do. Why? Madison. Miss Barham, Admiral Jessup would like you to be his guest for dinner and bridge this evening. Emily. Ah. Madison. Just dinner and bridge, nothing else. I'll have you delivered back to your quarters by 10:30. Emily. No, thank you. If you don't need me, Commander, may I take my lunch? She hands him her trip ticket. He signs it, gives it back. Madison. You're something of a prig, Miss Barham. Emily, who had started round the car to get her own seat, pauses and turns. Emily. I don't mean to be. She frowns, continues round the front of the car. Transient women's quarters. High-angle shot down on a large barracks-like room lined with cots and filled with a variety of military women. Wax, wrens, spars, etc., dress and undress, with much toweling, toileting, lipsticking, etc. Emily sinks down onto a cot next to one on which Sheila, swathed in towels, is dyeing her hair red with dabs of cotton. A small laboratory of bottles, vials, bowls, and basins is spread out on the cot before her. Emily. Do you think I'm a prig, Sheila? Sheila. Oh, Lord, yes, love. You've been shattering us all with your virtue ever since you joined this motor pool. Emily. Have I been that awful? Sheila. Bloody virgin goddess herself. Emily. Well, the fact is, I'm anything but. I'm grotesquely sentimental. I fall in love at the drop of a hat. That's why I gave up hospital driving. All those men moaning in the back of the ambulance, especially the lot from Africa. I used to read to them in my off hours. When they were healed and being sent back to the front, they'd come looking for me in the ambulance garage to spend their last nights of leave with them. Little hotel rooms, bed and breakfast for a guinea. I paid the guinea myself more often than not. She lies back on the bed, suddenly weary. Emily. But I couldn't say no to them, could I? I had just lost my husband, almost cries, at Tobruk. And I was overwhelmed with tenderness for all dying men. As I say, I'm grotesquely sentimental. What on earth are you doing with your hair? Sheila. I'm turning it red. I'm going to one of Charlie Madison's dues tonight. Emily. Oh, yes. I was just asked to that one. Does it require red hair? Sheila. Oh, do come along, love. Charlie lays on smashing food. All sorts of meats, fruit, real cream, things we haven't seen in England for years. You'll probably get a new dress out of it. Have you ever been up to Madison's room? Emily. No. Sheila. Well, you've got to see it. It's the swankiest shop in town. He's got everything up there but the crown jewels. Emily. Yes, so I've heard. Sheila pulls out a parcel from under her bed, extracts wisps of hosiery and lingerie. Here, look at that. You can't buy that at Harrod's. That's nylon, love, and this is pure silk. I'd show you the new dress, but I don't want the others here to see. It's Bonwit Teller's. You've heard of that, I imagine. Emily. You mean he actually supplies you with a wardrobe? Sheila. Oh, Charlie dresses you proper. Americans don't like to see their women in uniforms. Emily. But it all ends in someone's bed, doesn't it? I mean, that's the point, isn't it? Sheila. Well, look who's talking after that lurid confession you just made. Emily. Sorry. I'm rather a prig at that. Sheila. I feel rather tender towards the poor beggars myself. Emily stands on edge. Well, I don't want to feel tender towards anyone, especially soldiers. Slowly takes a few paces. I've lost a husband, a father, and a brother in this war. When my husband died, I almost went insane. I take these things badly. Tears in her eyes. I fall in love too easily, and I shatter too easily. I don't want any more doomed men. Sheila. Oh, do come tonight, love. These chaps aren't doomed. They'll never see any of this shooting, that's for sure. We'll have a few laughs. I've never seen anyone needing a few laughs as much as you do. Close-up of Emily. Her eyes close. A sigh shudders through her as she masters her tears. Hotel Admiral Jessup Suite, living room. Madison is going over the dinner arrangements with the floor service captain, Tom. A handsome table has been set up in the middle of the living room. Madison moves around it, checking every piece of silver, every plate. Madison, examining a water glass. Very nice crystal, Tom. Danish? Tom. Of course. Madison. I don't much care for the centerpiece. You can take that out. Tom. Yes, sir. Madison, fingering the table linen. Italian. Very lovely. Tom. Thank you. Madison is suddenly aware he is being watched. He looks across to the doorway leading to his room. Madison's POV. Emily stands in the doorway, fascinated by all that's going on. Across Madison to Emily, as Madison turns to the floor service captain. Madison. Cocktails at 5:30 and heavy on the gin, Tom. Dinner at 6 promptly. Once you've cleared away, I'll manage from there. Tom. Very good, sir. Emily. You're not limping, Commander. She turns back into Madison's room. Madison follows her. Madison's room. Reverse angle as Emily enters, followed by Madison. Emily, looking about the room wide-eyed. It's the Arabian Nights. Do you have chests of rubies in the bedroom? In the bathroom? Madison, just perfumes and liquor. Emily, walking about, looking at this case, that carton. I've heard about this room, Commander. All the girls talked about it, but I simply couldn't believe it. Bergdorf, Goodman's, Saks Fifth Avenue, Lord and Taylor, Sheila's right. It's the swankiest shop in town. Good heavens! Arpeggier perfume. How did you ever manage Arpeggier perfume with the Germans in Paris? There are Germans in Paris, aren't there? There is a war on, I think. You Americans must have heard something about it, I'm sure. Madison has found a cigar box among the things on the bureau. Now he sits on a soft chair and lights a cigar. Madison regards Emily flatly. Just pick out a dress, honey, and be back at 5:30. Emily turns, startled. Madison. You American haters bore me to tears, Miss Barham. I've dealt with Europeans all my life. I know all about us parvenus from the States who come over here and race around your old cathedral towns with their cameras and Coca-Cola bottles, brawl in your pubs, paw your women, and act like we own the world. We overtip, we talk too loud, we think we can buy anything with a Hershey bar. I've had Germans and Italians tell me how politically ingenuous we are. Perhaps so, but we haven't managed a Hitler or a Mussolini yet. I've had Frenchmen call me a savage because I only took half an hour for lunch. Hell, Miss Barham, the only reason the French take 2 hours for lunch is because the service in their restaurants is lousy. And the most tedious of the lot are you British. We crass Americans didn't introduce war into your little island. This war, Miss Barham, to which we Americans are so insensitive, is a result of 2,000 years of European greed, barbarism, superstition, and stupidity. Don't blame it on our Coca-Cola bottles. Europe was a going brothel long before we came to town. Emily. Dear me, what an outburst. Madison. So lay off, Mrs. Miniver. If you don't like our Hershey bars, don't take them. Pick yourself a frock or get out. It's not my job to listen to your sentimental contempt. Emily appraises Madison with new eyes. Emily. You know, I could almost believe you flew for the RAF. Madison. I never flew for the RAF, and you know it. Emily. You didn't expect me to believe you for a minute, did you? Madison. Not for a minute. Emily. But why, Commander? Madison. You're here, Miss Barham. Emily looks quickly at him. Yes, so I am. You're a complete rascal. I'll be back at 5:30, Commander. Madison opening the door. The Admiral will be delighted you're coming. If I can be of any service, Miss Barham. Emily. Oh, I have my own clothes, Commander. I'll do without your Hershey bars. Two-shot. For a moment, the two of them appraise each other silently, smiles pending on their lips, amused by the other. Emily, smiling amiably. Do you have a girl, Commander? Madison, smiling just as amiably. None of your damn business, Miss Barham. They both smile at each other. Emily goes out. Madison closes the door. Dissolve to... Admiral Jessup's suite, living room. The Admiral's cocktail party is in full swing. There are 25 people present, including a distinguished civilian, a Russian general, and officers from the various allies. Free French, British Navy, etc. Some ladies and some not so. Emily is in conversation with an American Army colonel of about 40 and a British naval officer. Colonel. I don't much care for chamber music myself, but these Hungarians at the Princess are very good. Emily's attention goes to Madison, who makes his way among the guests. We follow his progress past Admiral Jessup and discourse with General Hallerton. Listen, Willie, I don't like the way the Navy's publicity is being handled in Overlord. General Hallerton. Yeah, I figured that's what this party was about. Madison notices Emily, and while steering another female guest in the direction of an officer, inquires if all is well. He looks at her appreciatively. Madison. Miss Barham, you must know somebody at Saks Fifth Avenue yourself. Emily. Oh, this old thing? Madison. If you need any assistance, I'll be near at hand. Emily can't help but admire his gallantry and hospitality. Admiral Jessup. We'll talk about it later. General Hallerton. You're wasting your time, Jessie. Panning, camera picks up American and British officers again. Colonel. I've been trying to get them American visas. The Russian general, with a girl in tow, approaches Madison in group. Madison. Horoshaw? Russian general. Ochin Horoshaw. The Russian general makes some Russian comment. Madison laughs and translates. Cut to bus. Nameless broad. French naval officer, Air Force officer, and 2 other women. Nameless broad. Avocados. Really, I haven't seen an avocado in London for years. Bus. When the Admiral entertains, he likes to have a surprise or two for his guests. Nameless broad. But avocados! And out of season at that. Cut to Madison, continuing to translate for Russian. British naval officer, you can't leave decent musicians wandering around homeless. There are so few really good ones as it is. An American major enters in background and goes to the bar. Madison spots him. On the way, Madison first gives instructions to Tom, then joins the major. Madison. Let's keep the food moving, Tom. The Admiral wants the room cleared for bridge in 2 hours. Tom. As you wish, sir. Madison, at bar. Hello, Ted. I've been looking for you. I dropped in to see your wife at the hospital in Washington. She's really much stronger and says not to worry about her. Major, as they move away. Thank you, Charlie. That was very thoughtful of you, and I appreciate it. Admiral Jessup's living room 2 hours later. Across the bridge foursome, the Admiral and Madison are paired against Hallerton and Emily. In the background, the party is getting sexier. Admiral Jessup, doubled. General Hallerton, redoubled. Madison, pass. Emily, pass. General Hallerton, as dummy, lays out his hand on the table. Emily winces. General Hallerton, did I overbid? Emily, well, let us just say you have unbridled courage. Admiral Jessup leads a card. Emily slips a card from the dummy. The play goes quickly and expertly. Without losing a second's concentration, Jessup engages General Hallerton, now standing behind him in conference. Admiral Jessup. Willie, I don't like the way the Navy's been left out of the publicity in Overlord. I want extreme measures taken to publicize the Navy's role in the invasion. The President supports me in this. General Hallerton. Yes, we got your cables, Jesse, but I don't know what you mean by extreme. Emily, studying the cards. Oh dear, this is going to be a bloodbath. Admiral Jessup. I want a Marine division to be the first assault wave. General Hallerton. Good Lord, you're not dragging that old chestnut in. Admiral Jessup. The Marines are the traditional shock troops, and you know it. General Hallerton. Not in the European theater of operations, they're not. You Navy guys had all the headlines in the South Pacific, but Europe's an Army show. That's been clearly understood from the beginning, Jesse. Admiral Jessup, I've written the Supreme Commander about this. General Hallerton, yes, that's one of the reasons he's out of town. You must be off your nut, Jesse, if you think the assault plans are going to be changed at this stage of preparation. You know when the balloon's going up. Madison, pondering his hand. What balloon? General Hallerton. I've been instructed to say we'll put on a few more Navy staff officers at Supreme Headquarters, and we're going to push the PRO people to send out more Navy releases. But the Supreme Commander wants it clear, Jesse, that he considers this inter-service competitiveness in very bad taste. He's having enough trouble keeping the English and French in line. Admiral Jessup gathers in a trick and then lays the rest of his hand down. Admiral Jessup, you're down 4, Willie. Doubled, redoubled, and vulnerable. General Hallerton, sitting down, scowling. A Marine division. You must be losing your mind, Jesse. Who deals? Admiral Jessup's living room, still later. Admiral Jessup stands at the window looking out. The party is breaking up. The Admiral mumbles to himself, or at least it seems that way. Madison comes out of the room. He starts to cross to the bridge table where General Hallerton sits, meticulously rechecking the scores of the games. General Hallerton, standing unhappily. $34. All right. 2 waiters have entered from the hall. With a gesture, Madison indicates he wants the room cleared and begins his farewells to the last few guests. Madison. General Watterson, your car's ready. Cummings intercepts him. Cummings whispers, the champagne, Charlie. Madison. It's being chilled. I'll leave it outside your door in half an hour. Cummings, looking around the room. Where'd she go? Madison. I sent her in. Cummings nods and exits out the front door. Madison to General Hallerton. At Admiral Jessup's request, I've had the Scotch House send you 3 yards of tweed, General. It's for Mrs. Hallerton. General Hallerton. It won't get him his Marine division, Charlie, but it's generous of him anyway. Thank him for me. Exits. By now, the last guests, General Watterson with Sheila and Emily, are congregating by the door, putting on the coats. Madison. Good night, sir, Sheila. They exit with Emily, the last straggler. Madison crosses to her. Madison. There's a car downstairs for you, Miss Barham. If you'd like me to take you down. Emily. No, thank you. I'll manage. I had a lovely evening, Commander. Please ask me again. She follows General Watterson and Sheila out. The waiters finish clearing away. Madison closes the door on them all. Admiral Jessup stands by the window looking out. There's no doubt of it now. He is mumbling to himself. Madison. Sir? Admiral Jessup turns. What? Madison. I thought you said something to me, sir. Admiral Jessup. You're losing your mind, Charlie. Madison. Yes, sir. I'll lay out your nightclothes, sir. He crosses to the Admiral's room. The Admiral turns back to the window. Admiral Jessup's bedroom. Madison enters. He turns on the bed lamp, turns off the overhead light, and turns down the bed with deft, familiar movements. He glides into the bathroom, draws the Admiral's tub. He comes out, extracts an old-fashioned nightshirt and sleeping cap from the bureau drawer, and lays them neatly across the bed. The Admiral enters, unbuttoning his jacket. Admiral Jessup. Was I very rude, leaving all the goodbyes to you, Charlie? Madison. It wasn't noticed, sir. Madison takes the Admiral's jacket, drapes it onto a hanger, slips it into the closet. He bends and retrieves the Admiral's slippers, whisks a bathrobe off the closet hook, and crosses back into the bathroom where he turns off the tub and leaves the robe and slippers. When he comes out, the Admiral has stripped off his shirt, which Madison takes. Admiral Jessup. I've got the damnedest headache. Madison. I'll fix you a drink before your bath, Admiral. The Admiral strips off his undershirt. Madison takes it and neatly folds it and the shirt onto a chair. The Admiral straddles a hardback chair, rests his chin on his forearms. Madison begins massaging the Admiral's shoulders. Admiral Jessup. Charlie, in 7 weeks I've got to go back to Washington and testify before the Joint Committee on Military Affairs. On the agenda is a review of the Army's new long-range bomber program, and there'll be speculation as to whether that doesn't make carrier-based aircraft obsolete. In short, they're out to scrap the Navy again. Charlie, the Air Corps coming out of this war as the darling of the services. The Army and its Air Corps. The Navy will be the runt of the litter. They'll scrap us like they do after every war. They'll limit our capital ships, reduce our crews to cadres, strip us back to Pearl Harbor level. And then they'll scream how ill-prepared we are when somebody hits us with another Pearl Harbor. All Washington is bug-eyed over this invasion of Europe, and this invasion of Europe is an all-Army show. That's why we're here, Charlie. To remind the Congress of the United States and the American public that this invasion is also a Navy show. Chuckles. I just threw in that Marine Division for openers. They turned me down and now they owe me something. But what? I don't know what to shoot for. But I've got to come up with something. It's driving me crazy. Charlie, fix me something for this head. It's killing me. Madison. Sure, Admiral. Madison turns from his massaging and exits into the living room. Admiral Jessup's living room. Madison enters, moving to the improvised bar. He quickly mixes a drink and returns to Admiral Jessup's bedroom. Madison enters with a drink. The Admiral moves about the darkish room, muttering to himself. Admiral Jessup, barely audible. Sure, George. Sure. Sure, support that damned peanut. Damn Chinese communist 5 years. George, 5 years the most. Madison, extending the glass. Here's your drink, sir. The Admiral crosses past Madison and goes into the bathroom, muttering, seeming not to notice him. Admiral Jessup. Moderates, boy. Moderates. You're on the nose there, George. Land reform. Take the steam out of it. Only damn army in China, anyway. He disappears into the bathroom, closing the door. Madison is left standing with an outstretched drink. He sets the glass on the bed table and calls out. Madison. I'll leave your drink on the bedroom table, sir. There is no answer. Madison shrugs and crosses back into the living room. Admiral Jessup's suite, living room. Madison pauses to dump a loaded ashtray, overlooked by the waiters, into a trash can, then goes into his own room. Madison's bedroom. Madison enters the dark room, stops in the doorway, framed in the rectangle of light, his face registering mild surprise. Across Madison to his bed, Emily is perched on it, legs crossed and hands folded patiently in her lap. She smiles up at Madison in the doorway. Reverse angle across Emily to Madison in the doorway. Madison. Come to think of it, I don't have a girl. Close up of Emily. Emily. I don't have a man. Stands, smiles. Do you think we can keep it on that level? Madison. Not a chance. This is going to be just one of those things, you and I. I can see that. Emily. I like your spirit, Commander. She slips happily into his arms. They kiss many times. Madison kicks the door behind him shut. The room is now lit only by moonlight. Between us, they murmur. Madison. I'm not your type, you know. Emily. Like hell you're not. They kiss, clutch at each other. It's a hungry scene. Madison. I'd have thought you'd fancy heroes. And I'm yellow, honey, clear through. Emily, whispering. That's your most attractive quality. They sink into bed. Emily. I've had it with heroes, Charlie. Every man I've loved has died in this war, but you'll never get caught in this shooting. That's one thing I'm sure of. You can't imagine how attractive that makes you to me. She tears at his tie and collar buttons so she can kiss his neck. Madison. Easy, Tiger. That's a tailored shirt. Emily, affably. Oh, shut up and let me kiss you. They wrap themselves ravenously around each other. Madison, delighted. What a savage. For a moment, the screen is filled with the bobbing and weaving of the two heads and the four shoulders of the lovers as they assail each other with embraces. Suddenly, the door to the hallway in background is thrust open, and a shaft of light shoots into the room, bathing Madison and Emily with light. The two lovers slowly extricate themselves from their sinuous embrace and turn to see what this interruption is. Framed in the doorway against the light of the hall is the Admiral. He makes an odd figure, dressed as he is in an old-fashioned nightshirt with sleeping cap askew on his brow, especially here as he shouts at the two startled lovers. Admiral Jessup, the first dead man on Omaha Beach must be a sailor. Do you read me, sir? The first dead man on Omaha Beach must be a sailor. Put your mind on that, sir. He abruptly exits into the hallway, slamming the door behind him. Reverse angle to Madison and Emily on the bed. They are both staring blankly at the camera, where the Admiral had been standing. Emily. Dear me, what was that about? Madison sits up slowly. Madison, befuddled. What did he say? Emily. I think he said the first dead man on Omaha Beach must be a sailor. That's a very piquant thing to say, don't you think? Madison stands. Yes, I think I'd call that piquant. He crosses to the doorway, opens it, peeks out into the hallway. Emily, on the bed. Does he do that often? Madison, looking up and down the empty hallway. No, I can't say I can ever remember him doing that before. Excuse me a minute, will you, please? Hallway, outside the Admiral's suite. Madison closes his bedroom door. He moves thoughtfully past the living room entry to the Admiral's door and knocks gently. There is no answer. After a moment, he opens the door tentatively. The Admiral in his nightshirt sits on his bed. He looks up. Admiral Jessup. Hello, Charlie. The first dead man on Omaha Beach must be a sailor. Think about that for a minute. Madison, closing the door. In what reference, sir? Admiral Jessup. Yes, the unknown sailor. Let me kick that around in my own mind a bit. I want the whole team in my office at 0900 hours tomorrow morning to discuss just that. Madison, to discuss just what, sir? Admiral Jessup. Arrange that, Charlie. 0900 hours, the whole team. Good night, Charlie. The Admiral switches off his bed lamp, plunging the room into darkness, gets under the covers, and goes promptly to sleep. Madison. Yes, sir. Hallway outside Admiral Jessup's suite. Madison comes out, closing the door. He stands a moment, perplexed to say the least. Then he moves still another door down, stops in front of Cummings's room, and knocks sharply. Lieutenant Commander Cummings's room. The room is very dark, lit only by moonlight. Two bodies leap from the bed. They are Cummings with his clothes in disarray and a nameless broad with no clothes on at all. Cummings, stuffing his shirt tails in. Who is it? Nameless broad, muttering imprecations. Ruddy Americans, always barging in this ruddy hotel. The door opens and Madison takes a step into the room. Madison. Bus, the screwiest thing just happened. Cummings. For Pete's sake, Charlie, close the door, will you? The nameless broad, frantically trying to hide behind Cummings and to look for her skirt at the same time, mutters. Nameless broad. Ruddy Americans haven't got the ruddiest clue to what privacy means. Madison, closing the door. The Admiral just barged into my room in his nightshirt bus and yelled at the top of his lungs. The first dead man on Omaha Beach must be a sailor. Cummings. All right, Charlie, what's up? I mean, you see the obvious state of affairs here, Charlie. Madison. I'm telling you, I think the Admiral's flipped a braid. He just came charging into my room yelling, the first dead man on... Cummings. Charlie, for Pete's sake, I mean... He indicates the naked girl muttering behind him. Nameless broad. Ruddy circus, the whole ruddy place. Cummings. Tomorrow morning, what do you say, Charlie? Madison. Tomorrow morning, 0900 hours, the Admiral wants the whole team in his office to discuss the first dead man on Omaha Beach must be a sailor. Cummings. Yeah. Swell. Great. Tomorrow morning, Charlie. Nameless broad. Where's my ruddy shoes? Madison. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. He turns and exits. Cummings glowers. The nameless broad continues with her indistinguishable imprecations. Cummings to the nameless broad. I think Charlie's flipped a screw. Nameless broad. This hotel's a ruddy circus, if you don't mind me saying. Fade out. Fade in. Grosvenor Square, day. Wide-angle shot showing an endless convoy of army trucks and jeeps inching along South Audley Street. Navy Building. Admiral Jessup's office. Admiral Jessup, spruce, shining, and apparently sane, stands at the window looking down on the convoy. After a moment, he turns from the window. Reverse angle across Admiral Jessup to his team. Captain Ellender, Lieutenant Commanders Cummings and Madison, and Chief Petty Officer Adams sitting about the office. A sparse room decorated with a picture of President Roosevelt and one of Admiral King on one wall. A second wall is entirely covered by a large map of Great Britain and Western Europe. Admiral Jessup. We've got about a month. He moves to the wall map. I want a movie made showing the Navy's contributions to D-Day, from the procurement of vessels to the actual landings. Gentlemen, 4,000 ships and boats, battleships, destroyers, landing crafts, spit kits, excursion steamers, channel boats, private yachts, tugs, tubs, and Chinese junks. 4,000 vessels. The greatest armada ever assembled by man is going to cross that channel. And what's more, they're going to have to do it at night, across one of the nastiest pieces of water in the world, the English Channel. And every inch of that channel is mined in the bargain. It'll be the most incredible naval achievement in history. If Hitler could have done it, he'd have had the world in his pocket. It's the Navy that is the essence of victory in this invasion. I want a movie that makes that clear. Cummings. Well, sir, Admiral Jessup, I especially want a movie to show the Navy demolition units who are going to be the first men in on those beaches. Casualties are estimated at 50% in the first waves. A lot of brave men are going to die on D-Day, gentlemen. I want a movie made that shows the first brave man to die on those beaches was a sailor. The phone rings. Commander picks it up. Cummings on phone. This is Admiral Jessup's office. Admiral Jessup. If that's Sir Roger Charlton's office, I'll be there directly. Cummings on phone. Yes, sir, he'll be there directly. He's leaving now, sir. Admiral Jessup putting on his hat. Now, here's what I want done. I want a photography team assigned to the demolition engineers to record their activities on film right up to the beaches. I'm leaving this in your hands, Bus. I consider it urgent. Any questions? He crosses to the door to Cummings's outer office, pauses. The members of his team purse their lips and avoid each other's eyes. Cummings. Well, sir, there are already 6 Navy photography teams assigned to the first assault wave. Admiral Jessup. I don't care about any other photography teams. I want one of my own to record the heroism of those Navy engineers. I want this film made, Commander. Now you get some photographers' mates and start making it. Cummings. Yes, sir. Admiral Jessup. Any questions? Cummings. No, sir. Nobody else says anything, so the Admiral exits. A moment of silence fills the room until the click of the outer door is heard. Cummings stands. Cummings. Now, how's that for a cockamamie assignment? Ellender. He's been getting these eccentric flashes ever since his wife died last year. Cummings. Reaches for the phone. Yeah. Well, he's got something in the back of his mind. I better check around and see if there are any unattached mates around. To Madison, now leaving. Where are you going? Madison waves an airy goodbye and exits. Cummings calling after him. Call in around noon, Charlie. London Street in St. John's Woods, day. It is an uncharacteristically sunny morning for London. Madison, carrying 2 candy boxes, comes down the street of the pleasant middle-class houses, each embedded in charming gardens and isolated by neatly chopped hedges. Half the peaceful street, however, has been shattered by bombing, and parts of walls are all that remain of some of the houses. At the near end of the street, Madison finds one that is still intact. He unlatches the gate and goes up the walk. Emily's house. Day. Madison raps the clapper on the front door. The door behind Madison opens. He turns from looking at the neighborhood to face his hostess. Close-up of Emily in the open doorway, smiling like a well-fed cat. She's clearly a woman in love. Madison. Hello, Emily. Emily. Hello, Charlie. You're just in time for tea. Close-up of Madison. He's in love too. Obviously, last night went off very well. Madison entering the house. Thank you. Emily's house foyer. Madison comes into the darkish anteroom and Emily closes the door. Emily notes the box he's carrying. You brought me some chocolates. Madison proffering the parcels. 2 boxes of Hershey bars. Emily, annoyed. Well, that's very American of you, Charlie. You just simply had to bring along some small token of opulence. Well, I don't want them. She turns, annoyed, starts for the living room, then turns on the threshold. Emily. You Yanks can't even show affection without buying something. Madison, following her. Well, don't get into a state over it. I just thought you liked chocolates. Emily. I do. My country's at war and we're doing without chocolates for the while. And I don't want oranges or eggs or soap flakes either. Don't show me how profitable it will be to fall in love with you, Charlie. Don't Americanize me. Madison stares into the living room. Madison's POV. The living room is flooded with family photographs and portraits. On the piano alone are some 10 framed photographs of various sizes, showing men in uniform for the most part. On the wall hangs a portrait of a stern, gray-haired man in his 60s, wearing sashes of honor across his chest and a variety of medals. Emily. That's my father. He lost a leg in the First War and got the Victoria Cross for that. He died in an air raid a week after that portrait was painted. That's my brother there. She indicates a photograph on the piano. His name was Charlie too, by the way. He was shot down during the Blitz, sacrificed himself to save his squadron. The one you're looking at now is my husband. Madison holding a photograph. He looks like a rake. Emily. Yes. He was very bawdy. I was insane about him. He died at Tobruk. The rest of the lot there are cousins. There's 2 of them still living. I must say the family's been thinned out nicely, one way or the another. She takes Madison's arm and speaks confidentially. Emily. Charlie, before we go out to my mom, I must tell you she's just a bit mad. You'll like her very much. She's very funny, but she may yatter away about my father and my brother as though they were still alive. Just go along with her. You do understand. Madison. Oh, I get the point. You don't want my Hershey bars. Emily. Yes. I think it profane to enjoy this war. She starts for the French doors to the garden. As she reaches for the knob, Madison stops her. Madison. You know, I never realized what a sensual satisfaction grieving is for women. Emily stiffens. I'm not sure that was a very tasteful thing for you to say. Madison. I'm not sentimental about war. I see nothing noble in widows. Emily smiles. You're jealous of my husband. I like that. She opens the French doors and they go out. Emily's house, garden. Emily and Madison come into the garden. Emily's mother is seated at a small garden table pouring tea. Miss Barham is a tweedy lady in her 50s and as mad as the Hatter. Mrs. Barham. You've brought chocolates. 2 whole boxfuls. What a treasure trove. Emily. I've already refused them, Mother. Everyone sits and gets comfortable. Madison. On ascetic grounds. Mrs. Barham. You're an absolute flagellant, Emily. Emily, sipping tea. Oh, take the things if you want them. Miss Barham. Well, I shall have one for later. I shall have one later. I'll save the rest for your father. She whispers conspiratorially to Madison. I take it you're Emily's new lover, since she hasn't bothered to introduce us. Madison whispers. You must be her mother. Mrs. Barham. Ah, you've found the chink in my armor, have you? What are your religious beliefs, sir? Madison. I'm a practicing coward. Mrs. Barham. That is very fervent of you. Emily. I should have known you 2 would get on. You're as dotty as she is, Charlie. Madison, sipping tea. Actually, before the war, I was an assistant night manager of a diplomatic hotel in Washington, D.C. Mrs. Barham. Whatever made you say that? Emily. Oh, Lord. I'm beginning to feel like Alice at the tea party. Mrs. Barham. Shh. The commander is about to tell us of a religious experience, I think. Madison. Yes. Before the war, I was an assistant night manager of a diplomatic hotel in Washington, D.C. It was my job to arrange things for many of the great historical figures who came to Washington on great historical missions. Mrs. Barham, what exactly did you arrange? Madison, usually I arranged girls, but individual tastes varied, of course. Mrs. Barham, of course. Madison, well, it's useful work anyway, especially in a war. I was offered all sorts of commissions in the Navy and Army, the one I have now, in fact. Admiral Jessup phoned me to join his staff, but I had always been a little embarrassed by my job at the hotel and wanted to do something redeeming. Have you noticed that war is the only chance a man gets to do something redeeming? That's why war is so attractive. Mrs. Barham, yes, war is very handsome, I quite agree. Madison, at any rate, I turned down Admiral Jessup's offer and enlisted in the Marines as a private. I even applied for combat service. My wife, to all appearance a perfectly sensible woman, encouraged me in this idiotic decision. 7 months later, I found myself invading the Solomon Islands. There I was, splashing away in the shoals of Guadalcanal. It suddenly occurred to me a man could get killed doing this kind of thing. The fact is, most of the men splashing along with me were screaming in agony and dying like flies. I don't think any of them wanted to die. Yet they had all volunteered for the Marines, and the odds on getting killed are pretty good in the Marines. To make it more grotesque, their wives, sweethearts, and mothers had all applauded their acts of suicide, and their children were proud of them for it. It was then I realized how admirable war was, the most admirable act of man. Those were brave men dying there. In peacetime, they had all been normal, decent cowards, frightened of their wives, trembling before their bosses, terrified at the passing of the years. But war had made them gallant. They had been greedy men. Now they were self-sacrificing. They had been selfish. Now they were generous. Hell, war isn't hell at all. It's man at his best, the highest morality he is capable of. He sits back, crosses his legs, sips his tea, pleased with his long statement. The women wait expectantly for him to go on. And after a moment, Mrs. Barham speaks up. Mrs. Barham, well, you're not going to just leave us there splashing at Guadalcanal. Emily, never mind all that. What's all this about a wife? Madison sets his teacup down, leans back, folds his hands across his chest, and studies the clear sky. Madison, that night I sat in the jungles of Guadalcanal, sopping wet and waiting to be killed. And all because there's a madman in Berlin, a homicidal paranoid in Moscow, a manic buffoon in Rome, and a group of obsessed generals in Tokyo. Mrs. Barham, by George, he's right. They're all batty. Madison, I said to myself, Charlie, you're as nutty as they are. Worse. At least they're not sitting here in a jungle waiting to be killed. It was then I had my blinding revelation. Mrs. Barham, Madison, I discovered I was a coward. That's my new religion. I'm a big believer in it. Cowardice will save the world. You see, cowards don't fight wars. They rabbits at the first shot. If everybody obeyed their natural impulse and ran like rabbits at the first shot, I don't see how we could possibly get to the second shot. Mrs. Barham, that seems perfectly sensible to me. Emily, Mother, he's just being facile. Madison, it's not war that's insane, you see. It's the morality of it. It's not greed and ambition that makes wars. It's goodness. Wars are always fought for the best of reasons. for liberation or manifest destiny, always against tyranny and always in the interests of humanity. So far this war, we've managed to butcher some 10 million humans in the interests of humanity. The next war, it seems, will have to destroy all of man in order to preserve his damned dignity. It's not war that is unnatural to us. It's virtue. As long as valor remains a virtue, we shall have soldiers. So, I preach cowardice. Through cowardice, we shall all be saved. Mrs. Barham stirred almost to tears. That was exalting, Commander. Absolutely occult. Emily. Never mind the metaphysics, Commander. Let's get back to your wife. Madison, sipping his tea. Well, needless to say, that first night in the jungle, I wrote to Admiral Jessup saying in essence, "For heaven's sakes, get me out of this." 2 weeks later, I was transferred back to Washington. I raced home to my wife, Emily, and found her with another man. Madison. Oh, Lord, no. My wife, who had deceived me before the war more times than I cared to think about, was now having the time of her life being faithful. She was furious with me for coming back. There was no reason for her being virtuous anymore. She promptly sued me for divorce on the grounds of religious differences. I was a self-preservationist, you see, and she was a high Anglican sentimentalist. Emily, satisfied. Well, you're fair game, then. Mrs. Barham. After every war, we always find out how unnecessary it was. After this one, I'm sure all the generals will dash off to write books about the blunders made by other generals, and statesmen will publish their secret diaries, and it will show, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the war could easily have been avoided in the first place. The camera edges in on Mrs. Barham as her face suddenly clouds with pain. She is no longer the outlandish British dowager. Mrs. Barham murmurs, "And the rest of us are, of course, left with the job of bandaging the wounds and burying the dead." Madison. I don't trust people who make bitter reflections about war, Mrs. Barham. It's always the generals with the bloodiest records who are the first to shout what a hell it is. And it's always the war widows who lead the Memorial Day parades. Emily. That was unkind, Charlie, and very rude. Madison, quite serious. We shall never end wars, Mrs. Barham, by blaming it on ministers and generals or warmongering imperialists or all the other banal bogies. It's the rest of us who build statues to those generals and name boulevards after those ministers. It's the rest of us who make heroes of our dead and shrines of our battlefields. We wear our widows' weeds like nuns, Mrs. Barham, and perpetuate war by exalting its sacrifices. My brother died at Anzio. Emily. I didn't know that, Charlie. Madison, not taking his eyes from Mrs. Barham. Yes, an everyday soldier's death, no special heroism involved. They buried what pieces they found of him. But my mother insists he died a brave death and pretends to be very proud. Mrs. Barham. Perhaps your mother needs this pretense to endure your brother's death, Charlie. Madison. He's dead, Mrs. Barham. He was killed at Anzio, an occasion for grief, even anger. But why pride? Mrs. Barham. You're very hard on your mother, Charlie. It seems a harmless enough pretense to me. Madison. No, Mrs. Barham. You see, now my other brother can't wait to reach enlistment age. That will be in September. Mrs. Barham. Oh, Lord. Madison. It may be ministers and generals who blunder us into wars, Mrs. Barham, but the least the rest of us can do is to resist honoring the institution. What has my mother got for pretending bravery was admirable? She is under constant sedation and terrified she might wake up one morning and find her last son has run off to be brave. I don't think rude or unkind before, do you, Mrs. Barham? Mrs. Barham, perceptibly upset. No. Suddenly stands. You better push off, Emily, if you gotta get to work. Emily, starting off with Madison. Give my best to father, then. Mrs. Barham, standing by the tea table, beginning to cry. Your father died in the Blitz, Emily. Emily pauses on her way to the house, turning to regard her mother. Mrs. Barham, and your brother died a brave and pointless death in December 1940. I've carried on much too long with all of this as it is. Emily takes a solicitous step to her mother. Mrs. Barham, no, do go, Emily. I'd much rather be alone. I mean it. She looks full-faced at Madison, her eyes filled with tears. Mrs. Barham, you're a very kind man, Commander. I hope you'll come again. Madison, thank you, ma'am. I'd like to. He turns, takes Emily's arm, and leads her back to the French doors of the house. Madison and Emily go to the house. Emily keeps looking back at her mother, who is standing now, head up, tears coursing down her cheeks, crying unashamedly. Grosvenor Square, Navy Building, night. Admiral Jessup's office. Admirals Jessup, Healy, and Hoyle at the end of a long conference. They are in shirt sleeves, collars open, ties askew, drawn and exhausted. The desk, which serves as a conference table, is covered by documents, maps, charts, etc. The huge wall map is dotted with markers. Admiral Healy. At the same time, Jesse, it has to be a neap tide, so we can unload all the Army's heavy stuff with a minimum of open beach to cross. D-Day has to be June 5th or 6th. We won't repeat these tidal conditions for half a year, at least with a moon, and that'll put us into the winter. Why don't we knock this briefing off, Jesse? We've been at it since 3. Admiral Jessup, on verge of exhaustion. Yes, I'm tired, George. It took me 6 months to get that portable port plan through the Pentagon, let alone the British. I haven't got but 2-3 hours sleep a night since Florence died. I'm really worn out. Admiral Hoyle. Why don't we get a couple of beers and get a decent night's sleep? Admiral Jessup. Yeah, let's really tie one on tonight. Cummings, aide-de-camp, enters with more documents. Admiral Jessup. Bus, call Charlie Madison and tell him to set up a little bar at the hotel. Cummings. Yes, sir. Hotel. Madison's room. Madison is extracting 2 bottles of bourbon from a case while Emily sips tea. Madison. Going to the living room door. Back in a minute. Admiral Jessup's suite, living room. Madison enters with the liquor. Cummings is waiting for him, takes the bottles from him. Laughter issues from the Admiral's room. Cummings. The old man's really tying one on tonight. Madison. He's earned it. More laughter comes out of the Admiral's room. Admiral Jessup's bedroom. Cummings enters with bottles. The 3 admirals are laughing so hard they can barely breathe. Admiral Hoyle is bent over, clutching his sides, stamping about. Admiral Healy is sitting on a hard-backed chair, a helpless heap of laughter. Admiral Jessup is weaving about the room, barely able to gasp out a story he is telling. Admiral Jessup. Hey, says this master-at-arms. Hey, you cadets there in the bushes. This provokes a fresh wave of wheezing and grunting. Admiral Jessup. Hey, you cadets, this Jimmy Legs says. We weren't called midshipmen then, remember? We were called naval cadets. Admiral Hoyle singing, I've drunk your health in company, I've drunk your health alone. Admiral Jessup. This was before Bancroft Hall was turned into a dormitory because the OOD was sitting in his laughing too hard to go on. He is reduced to helpless head shaking. Admiral Healy. Remember when they christened the Kansas with a bottle of water? And Admiral Jessup. Anyway, Admiral Hoyle singing, I've drunk your health so many times, I've damn near ruined my own. Admiral Jessup. Hey, you cadets, this Jimmy Legs says. The three admirals burst into a fresh wail of laughter. They sink back onto chairs and or the bed, gasping for air. Admiral Healy. Oh, oh, oh. Group shot of the admirals. Jessup and Healy slumped on the bed, Hoyle straddling a hardback chair. Three old bull walruses. Cummings enters the frame with a fresh drink for Admiral Jessup. Disappears silently. A moment of pensive silence over the old Romans. Admiral Healy. Jesse, you think they're going to unify the services after the war? Admiral Jessup. Yeah, looks that way. The Joint Committee on Military Affairs is holding hearings at the end of June. Ostensibly, it's about the Army's new bombers, but it's really about the Army pushing to be the dominant service in the military establishment. Admiral Healy. A lot of talk about the Air Corps becoming a separate service. Admiral Jessup. Yeah, every senator in Washington is infatuated with strategic bombing. You don't win wars with strategic bombers. Lurching to his feet. If you did, Hitler would be sitting in this hotel instead of us. Admiral Hoyle. Right. Admiral Jessup. Hitler ruled the skies. He had the greatest army in the world, but he couldn't cross 30 miles of English Channel. Hitler had everything except a navy. And now he's finished. He reels around the room, roaring with rage. Admiral Jessup. This planet is 5/6 water. God made it that way, and that's the way it's going to stay. In this world, you're as strong as your sea power. Admiral Healy beginning to laugh again. You tell him, Jesse. Admiral Jessup has focused his blurred eye on poor Cummings, standing by his improvised bar on the wall table. Admiral Jessup, roaring. Boy, my father was class of 1869. He beat Army 2-0 when they were still pitching baseball underhand. Admiral Healy, roaring with laughter. I wish he was pitching for us this year, Jesse. Admiral Jessup to Cummings. My grandfather died slipping a sloop through the Union blockade at Charleston. Cummings. Yes, sir. Admiral Hoyle. I knew we'd get back to the Civil War all right. Admiral Jessup, riveting Cummings with a bleary eye. My people shipped out for this country under sail, wood, and diesel ever since Captain John Smith left a Jessup to hold Jamestown in 1610. And I'm damned if I'm going to see the Navy sucking runts udder in my time, I'll tell you that. Cummings. Yes, sir. Admiral Jessup turns and exchanges looks with the other two admirals. They promptly sail off into another flight of howling laughter. Admiral Jessup. Oh, by George. Oh. He smiles over to Cummings. Hey, boss. How's that movie coming along? Cummings. Movie, sir? Suddenly, Admiral Jessup collapses. Cummings. Sir, are you all right? Hotel Madison's room. Madison is in a soft chair as Emily pours him tea. It's a vision of blissful domesticity. Madison. You know, something strange is happening to me. I'm beginning to like tea. Cummings enters from the living room. In the background, we hear a muffled shouting. Cummings. Charlie, you'd better come in here. Cummings is sufficiently anxious to make Madison promptly follow him out. Madison. What's the matter? Cummings. Come on, you'll see. Admiral Jessup's suite living room. Admiral Jessup, a sagging deadweight, is held up by Admirals Healy and Hoyle, framed in the doorway of the room. Admiral Jessup is staring gauntly, fixedly at the floor and shouting hoarsely. Admiral Jessup. Florence! Florence! Reverse angle across the three admirals as Cummings and Madison enter. Admiral Healy to Jessup. Take it easy, Jesse. Admiral Jessup shouting. Florence! Florence! Madison relieves Admiral Healy, wrapping Admiral Jessup's arm around his own neck. Madison to Admiral Healy. All right, I've got him, sir. To Cummings. Help me get him on the bed, Buzz. Cummings relieves Admiral Hoyle. Admiral Healy. Think we ought to call a doctor? Madison. No, he'll be all right, sir. The two commanders slowly bear their sagging admiral to his bed. Admiral Jessup's bedroom. The two aides bear the admiral through the doorway into the dark bedroom. Madison. What happened, Buzz? Cummings. I don't know. He asked me about that silly movie. I told him I couldn't locate any photographer's mates, and since he hadn't brought up the matter again, I let it slide. He started yelling for his wife. We couldn't stop him. They get the admiral onto the bed. Madison loosens the old man's collar. Madison. Okay, Bus, I'll take care of him. You see to Admirals Healy and Hoyle. The admiral opens his eyes. At the door, Cummings watches, concerned. Admiral Jessup murmurs, Charlie, I want you to make this movie for me. I want you to take charge, Charlie. I want you to make this movie for me. Madison looks up slowly as he removes the admiral's shoes. He regards the admiral, first frowning, then with compassion. Madison, gently. Sure, Admiral. You just leave it to me.